So here's my homemade version of the insulation for the Rancilio Silva. As you can see, I got lots and lots of zip ties. Holding everything together as tight as possible. And what's interesting too, under here, I also got two more layers. I got one of these at the bottom because there's a cavity to fill that, and another one at the very top, followed by so what I went through is I created these templates of various areas. This is the very top portion. I had to carefully measure and then see if there's a lot of trial and error trying to maximize a single 12 by 12 sheet. So once I had these cut to size how I like them, then I started playing around with how they fit on a sheet just to maximize the amount of surface area that a single sheet could cover with all these templates. So this was another trial and error, trying to get the spacing of the bolts just right, and also the temperature regulator, the over temperature regulator here. I had to place that just right, measure it several times, and also the OVP. You know, this thing right here, that's the seam. There's no other way. I didn't want to remove this just so I can have a seamless transition. So ideally, so here, let me just give you a brief challenge. What I had is keeping this very tight so there are no gaps. As you can see, there's a little bit of a gap there, and I wish I had that problem back here, because back here I could have done a better job holding it together while I was zip tying them together. But being over here, it's really hard to keep that seam together from splitting up as you're zip tying. So I did best possible. I mean, you can go as far as putting some heat tape around this thing if you wanted it super tight. But then, you know, at the end of the day, you still have holes. Like, for example, the underside is still exposed. So really, what am I doing here? You know, I'm just jumping the wagon with everyone else. So I also got the Uber kit, the PID kit. So I had that one. I had to carefully mount that, so I had very tight space. So you can see I had this template. So there's two levels. So there's this one at the very base, and then this one at the top. So this one has a provision for that little nut that comes on that thermocouple, and then followed by this one at the very top. So here I just had to make sure to line up the little hole that I had to punch with a nail. So this is just a little nail punch that I did right here to allow the cable to come through. And then finally I just had some scraps and I put those over the top to cover up those little two holes, and that's it. And I'm gonna hold off from covering this one up just because I want to measure my my brewing pressure, and this being an older model, basically what needs to happen is you first measure it. So what I intend to do is getting this taken off and putting a needle valve and a pressure gauge, a liquid type pressure gauge, well, I should say oil filled pressure gauge, and followed with a needle valve. That way I can simulate a shot being poured, and depending on what type of pressures I see, I may have to come in here and shim this little guy here. This is a copper washer. I may have to shim that to allow that. There's a spring in here with a little plunger that stops over here. So when this heats up to a certain pressure, I believe they come stock at 11 bar of pressure before this thing actually opens. So I will test that, confirm it, figure a certain flow rate through a needle valve, and then I'm probably going to shoot for a 9 bar. So there's going to be some trial and error trying to get the right thickness of the washer and getting this to open up at 9 psi instead of 11. I still don't know where this benchmark's at, but I'll find out. So at this point, this is all done. I don't intend to use heat tape, even though I did wanted to perfectly seal it here down to the seam, but I think it's fine. I think this will heat up or contain the temperature just fine. And hopefully, as I'm doing this, what's going through my head is a Uber, their kit here. All their studies that they've done to dial in when this operates in relationship to this temperature is based on an uninsulated model. So I don't know if that's going to matter too much, or maybe it will, or maybe it won't. I don't know. Insulated versus non-insulated temperature. Reaching that temperature should be maybe a little faster now that it's insulated, that 222. And granted that is the boiler top temperature only, and their study is based on the boiler top temperature to account for the flow through and the head, whatever that cooling effect is. They've accounted that in that with the sensor being at the top. So there's just going to be some trial and error there too, trying to adjust this eventually to create that desired temperature going through the puck. So this is all a science project to me. I enjoy doing stuff like this, tinkering. What else? That's about it. Just got to put this back together, and hopefully this will turn out to be a neat little machine. Thanks everybody. I'll keep you guys posted.